Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
All stations, stop Spider-Man.
Oh, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie. My name is Tucker Hayes, of course. I'm joined by a couple co-hosts from other universes. You wouldn't know them. They're from another universe. Tanner Dykstra and Abram Bueter, and today we're here to talk about the sequel, the long-anticipated sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is, of course, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. They're just changing one word in these titles. Not confusing at all. But if you want to talk to us about this movie, which a lot of people are seeing, this movie is doing incredibly fucking well, you can join our Discord. That link is top description. And while you're down there, leave a comment letting us know your favorite Spider-Man movie, and frankly, if this is up there, because for a lot of people it seems that it is. But we're very excited to talk about it and talk to you and hear your thoughts and yada yada yada. But boys, we're here. We made it. We survived 5 years since the release of Into the Spider-Verse, and now we've seen a sequel to it. It took a goddamn long time, but we've got another sequel coming in just a few months, actually.
9 months
March.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Tanner, I want to hear your thoughts on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Now, I was hotly anticipating Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, as many people were. I think that Into the Spider-Verse is nothing short of a masterpiece, if I do say so myself. And Across the Spider-Verse raised the bar in a lot of regards. It raised the bar in terms of the stakes, in terms of the scope, but also in terms of how well this film is executed, frankly. This is a beautiful film. Obviously, a lot of people dug into the comic book stylings of Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't, it has those comic book sensibilities in the art style, of course, but it also just takes a lot more of a experimental bent to how it displays its characters and its settings and stuff like that. And I think it looks fantastic. I think it sounds fantastic. I think everyone in it is great. Well, I'm going to say the mixing, let us know actually in the comments. Our theater, I'm fairly certain, had the volume set too low, and that seems to be a common thing, is that just the theaters have the volume set too low. Bad. Yeah. Because I'm sure that they didn't flub that one thing about this.
That would be a bizarre thing to mess up for a team this big, but it's also possible. I mean, considering how widespread an issue this is, I kind of think it's on the movie.
I do too.
I don't know. I choose to believe that it's the theater. For a number of reasons I've seen on Twitter, but that's besides the point. I think it's a great movie. Abram.
Yeah, I let me start by saying I think it's a great movie. I think it is an incredible achievement, and it's just a creative team coming out here and stunting on literally everyone else. Yeah. Because they make this kaleidoscopic array of animation styles seem so effortless.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think what's so amazing about the film is the rate at which they introduce new visual ideas makes, and I don't mean this in a negative way, it makes none of them seem especially important, because they're just stitching together this wider sense of, well, every frame is beautiful and every frame is different than the last. So we're not necessarily drawing attention to, oh, we're jumping into a different style. We're just doing it because we're that
every
good.
Frame is beautiful, no frame is.
but I mean it in a positive way, because they have such a mastery of their craft that they're just throwing out these diverse images and harmonizing them under this sense of just everything you see is going to be cooler than the last. I do personally feel like the pacing is strange. I do personally feel like the plot is not as compelling as Into the Spider-Verse. I do think that is the better film than this. And so I agree with you, Tanner, that this film is bigger and more confident and obviously more multiversal. But I think there might be something to say for the fact that in Into the Spider-Verse, and I think also the best ones of Across the Spider-Verse, are maybe a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit more about character.
Absolutely.
I agree.
And I feel like sometimes Across the Spider-Verse loses sight of that, but it's never too long before they sort of thwip me back into the more personal side of the action.
Very nice.
So I think it's a great film, but I wouldn't say I'm on this sort of get it a Best Picture nomination, it's the best animated movie I've ever seen train. I don't think I'm quite there, but I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I'm actually in a very similar boat to you, Abram, and I think that for me, I can nail down my issue as this is a part one. And much like with Fast X and Dune, two movies of similar quality, that it ends on an uncompelling note. I'm making a fucking joke at Dune's expense. Okay, everyone, calm down in the comments. I hear you fucking clickety-clacking. But I really did enjoy this movie, and I think that for me, it's a movie that I need to watch again. Into the Spider-Verse, actually, even though I really liked it when I saw it the first time, it was a film that I had some issues with and I was a little bit disappointed by. But as I learned to appreciate it for its own merits and what it sort of did, its own spin on not only the Spider-Man story, but Miles' story in that film, it's one of my favorite movies of all time now. And I think that Across the Spider-Verse, with the amazing, ridiculous critical reception this movie is getting, I feel like there's an element to this movie that I need to just experience a couple times now that I'm sort of on this film's level and know the pacing and know where the story is going, to where, especially once Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out, I think I will appreciate this movie a lot more in the future, after more rewatches, after understanding it a little better, because I think there's a lot in here that's kind of hard to glean on a first watch. I think that the themes of this movie are actually maybe more complex and more for the people involved or the characters involved, they feel more personal. There's a lot of like growth in these characters. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I really like that. I think that it introduces a lot of complexity to these characters that were very interesting in the first movie, but they didn't have a chance to grow in the same way they do now. And that's what I love so much about seeing this series and this set of specific characters from these movies evolve, is that we can continue their stories and combine it with the idea that we all know Spider-Man's story. Spider-Man is such a universal, now multiversal story that everyone knows the basics of, that they can play with it in such compelling ways that as a nerd, as a comic book fan, as someone who has broken down all these stories and read a ton of them over the course of my life, the fact that we're at the point of pop culture saturation, that this movie can do what it does and work for maybe one of the most successful movies of the year is amazing. That's such an achievement. And on a very subjective level, it's gratifying for me to be able to be like, yeah, I was on board with this, and now it's like the big thing. And I really love how they play with both Miles' story on a small scale level, as I'd certainly get to. I think that's where the strength of the movie lies. But very personally, I love the fact that it's got this ridiculous, convoluted thing about canon and about all the Spider-Men coming together and having these moments in time. I really dig that when it comes to sci-fi comic book storytelling. And I think this movie balances those. Sometimes the balance is off. I agree with you, Abram. But I think it does each of those very, very well. And I think I'll come to appreciate them both more over time. And once they're concluded in Beyond the Spider-Verse, because I was a little blue-balled by this movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't sitting there at the end like, wow, yeah, I just saw a great movie. It was like, whoops. I guess I gotta wait a couple months to see where this goes.
No, I have a question for you two.
Yeah.
Did you know it was a cliffhanger ending going in?
No. I mean, the only thing I could have surmised is that it was initially called Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and Part 2. But it's not anymore. So I thought maybe it had changed a little bit so it wasn't a Part 1.
I knew that it was basically half of the story. What's strange, though, is I feel like there's about 4 or 5 points where it feels like we're about to hit, that they're just going to drop credits on us.
I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I feel like, and we're doing full spoilers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure. Yeah, why not?
Okay, so click away now, or because I'm just going to start spoiling.
Great movie. Go see it.
Mm-hmm.
When Oscar Isaac, Spider-Man 2099 writes Oscar Isaac's character's name.
Miguel O'Hara.
Yeah, when Miguel is confronting him, and we get the line that I think is just the entire thesis of the film, like, other people are trying to write my story, I'm going to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it feels like, okay, let's just cut it there. Because I really do like the material that comes after, and I actually think that that's when a lot of the sort of build-up of stakes finally releases in a way where there's a lot of sort of pieces on the field, a lot of kinetic energy, but that feels like I want to really dig into it now, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like without litigating Dune any more than we need to.
I was making a joke, honestly.
But yeah. I think what was effective about Dune is they said, look, we're going to give you all of the preamble, and then we're just going to cut. Mm-hmm. I think that the end of Across the Spider-Verse, that last, however, there's so much that happens there that could have been 5 minutes of the movie cut really fast, or 20 minutes. I'm not exactly sure. But I feel like everything once Miles goes back to Earth 40 or goes to Earth 42, that's everything I might have saved for another film, because I want to really get into that a little bit further.
Yeah,
sure. Well,
and we will have that opportunity in 9 months, obviously.
Yeah. Because I knew it was a cliffhanger. I had heard on the chatterings on Twitter is that like movie ends on a big cliffhanger. So excited to see what happens next. Yada yada yada. So I was prepared for that going in, and so I don't share that. A very common like criticism of this film I've seen online is that everyone's like story's incomplete. That's the only thing about it that I'm like da 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 da. I'm like. I don't feel that incompleteness because it does feel like it's a to be continued. We got a cliffhanger. We got another installment of the story coming. Just like I don't view it as an issue in Dune or what have you. I still don't feel that I don't think it feels incomplete to me outside of that either.
Sure.
Like we get a complete character arc for a character that I want to talk about almost in equal measure of Miles, and that's Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Gwen Stacy, we open the film on her, and then we round out a character arc for her in this film as well towards the end. And of course, Miles makes a resolute decision at the end of this film when he does the I'm gonna do my own thing. And then that is, of course, complicated by the fact that he is in an entirely different universe. He is confronted with who people have theorized is who Miles was supposed to be in his own universe as well, is this Prowler figure.
Yeah.
Someone caught a very cool little thing in Into the Spider-Verse when he's first bitten by the spider. The colors initially flash purple and green and then change to red and blue when he's bitten. So like a little visual cue there.
He's also got a little purple and green in like his spider sense when that tingles. I believe that there was like, especially when he initially had his spider tingle and he was with his universe is Peter Parker. Peter's was blue and red, and his was purple and green, if I'm remembering correctly. So maybe there is sort of that element, and I think that thematically, I cannot wait to see what they do in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Like, that is such a fascinating concept, and the idea of this canon event being messed up by multiversal shenanigans somehow. We'll find out what happens in Beyond, but I really like the way that sort of retroactively informs what Miles' story was quote-unquote supposed to be, and that thematic concept of what your story or what a story is supposed to be is what this movie does incredibly well.
Yes,
and is what it sits in the back of my mind, like, ever since I saw it, I was like, oh, the story of Spider characters and what happens in their lives and what can be changed and what Miguel believes and what Miles believes. I think there's such interesting storytelling prowess there that is established very, very strongly in Across the Spider-Verse, basically the entire movie setting that concept up. And then it's going to take Beyond for us to really be like, yeah, here we go. This is what this all meant.
Yeah. I have a different thematic thing that's sticking in my mind. Okay. And it's really only because of, as I discussed with Tucker and some of our friends last night, a video online that sort of exemplifies this common and racist idea about Miles Morales and being a Spider-Man, basically like metatextually, is that Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man, is a thing that apparently a lot of people believe. And this film very deftly like examines and dismantles that idea through that final thrilling chase scene with Miguel O'Hara when he's saying, "You're the original anomaly. You were never supposed to be Spider-Man, and you're not Spider-Man." Like, there's a line basically to that effect, and I was like, that's brilliant. I love that stuff. And yes, of course, there's the whole building off of the theme, the more clear thematic narrative in this film, which is building off of the anyone can wear the mask from Into the Spider-Verse, and that's building your own story and not letting it be defined by any events that are supposed to happen or might happen in the future that are meant to define you. It's making your own story, doing your own thing. So I think this film is very thematically rich. I mean, you have that's present in Miles' story, that's present in Gwen's story. It's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like, and this is something we talked about with Multiverse of Madness, where I feel like I maybe came down on a different side of that movie than I might now, but I feel like often multiversal storytelling, frankly, to me, is stupid and it's cheap and it's boring and I don't care and it's dumb and it makes me feel less cool. I'm being hyperbolic and annoying, but when I really connect to a multiverse story, and everything everywhere is a film I draw into conversation here, it's when the multiverse actually has something to do with its characters and means something for them beyond just sort of an opportunity for plot or an opportunity for fan service. And it is both here, but I think it is principally this vehicle through which we explore Miles's identity, and I think that's why I feel like this is some of the best multiverse comic book storytelling I've seen, up there with Everything Everywhere, because it feels like there's a real deliberate purpose that moves beyond spectacle, and I really do like that. For all of our characters, I like the idea of even just the multiverse being the thing into which Gwen escapes to and then has to return from and confront her father on the other side of. I think it's handled very well, and I agree with you, Tanner. I think that Gwen is a really exciting part of this film. I would say a very underserved part of it also, just in the sort of the balance of screen time. I feel
I see.
We get her entire arc, and I understand it. But ultimately, there's this relationship between Spider-Woman and Miguel and Gwen that is told to us. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, maybe. Sure. But I think the film is at its best, as we've been saying, when we're pulling these larger ideas really close to our characters' hearts and connecting them that way. So I think we should just talk about the whole canonization event thing, because I didn't get it. I stopped listening, to be honest with you. As soon as he's like,
didn't watch Loki.
No. As soon as Miguel is like, hey Cortana, why don't you tell us the sort of,
why don't you exposition us for a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
I got totally lost. I understand the overarching notion. I got what I needed to out of it, but I don't understand in any material way what was actually happening, to be honest with you.
That's probably the experience of 99% of people who go to see this film. Is
definitely.
That, the couple sitting next to me who, after the movie, I heard one of them explaining to the other that, Sony owns Spider-Man. I was like, that if that's the level we're on, they're not understanding the canon events, these recurring ideas in various Spider-Man stories, and I'm sure that a lot of people's eyes glaze over for a lot of that. And I got it. If we discuss it, I think I'll probably parse out if I really understood all of it or not, if I'm forgetting some of it or what have you, but I rolled my eyes a little bit when they use the word canon events and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I see what we're doing. All right.
I wish they'd use Nexus event.
Yeah.
That is what is established in Loki, and is the MCU's version of this exact same thing, of events that are supposed to happen that create fractaling timelines. And they even use the same visual component of that tree that's made of like beams of light. That is the exact same core timeline thing that we see in Loki. And I like that they're all reaching this storytelling concept at the same time, and ultimately, what the fuck? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. But for me, I think why I was so sold on this is because I find that storytelling concept very compelling, and not only compelling on just like sort of a metatextual level, like what does it mean for the characters, but on like a sci-fi level. I am fucking lore master number one. Right. I like when someone sits down and is like, there's a reason for these things that seem a little bit weird, and why does every Spider-Man story have these elements, and have since Spider-Man was created? And of course, it's because different writers like taking different ideas, but when there is a sci-fi reason that you can sort of glom down and like get into the nitty-gritty of, I find that very compelling and kind of stitch together everything, which is what I think this movie does best for me on both a world-building perspective and a fan service perspective, is that every Spider-Man story is canon in the Spider-Verse. Of course, we could have assumed that, but even on the more like specific, on-the-nose fan servicey moments in this, well, I think they are like inclusion grown-worthy sometimes. I think on like a textual level, I prefer that they don't leave any stone unturned. Every Spider-Man story that we are familiar with is canon in this world, and follows these same rules and can be impacted by them. And I found that to be a really cohesive thing that makes all this storytelling that has been bubbling up on like 6 different avenues feel like it comes to a really interesting core and across the Spider-Verse. And we'll see how Miles' story ends up impacting what we think about these stories, and can they be changed, and what do those changes mean for like this larger, pun intended, web of storytelling. I think Across the Spider-Verse handled that very, very masterfully, and I liked that they were able to balance the storytelling potential of it and the fan service potential. Those are like really interlinked in very compelling ways.
I say I rolled my eyes, but don't conflate that with I didn't like it.
Sure.
As well.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I was like, okay, we're using the word canon. Okay, I see what we're doing. But like, yeah, you're right, Tucker. It's probably the best it's been done in any Spider-Man No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Loki, Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah.
By the way, little fun little. We're in spoilers already. Mrs. Chen, I fucking love that, dude.
We lost our fucking minds.
Venom? Is that who that woman was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's like the San Francisco local store owner that Venom like steals shit from, or like
I'm
takes stuff
Mrs. Chen.
from. God. We have memed Mrs. Chen so hard in our friend group, and all 5 of us sat up and lost our goddamn minds when we're like, no fucking way! I can't believe they did this.
Yeah, so, and I think that's actually an interesting point, because as it's probably clear, people have heard me talk about comic book stuff before, like, the lore just turns me off entirely. But I think what's so effective about this film is that it sort of extends an olive branch to everybody, because, as you're saying, at least for me, I was like, you know, it is kind of weird that every one of these spider people has the exact same series of events happen to them. And then I like how the film, as I was saying before, uses that as an opportunity to tell us something about Miles. I think that's really effective. And I do just think, while I didn't find this film to be laugh out loud funny all that often, I do think that its sense of tone and its understanding of the multiverse is wide enough to where let's go off and do all this goofy shit feels really natural. Like, I didn't know who Mrs. Chen was, but I thought that was funny. I like the Lego section. I like when...
That was so good.
Yeah.
That kid's like 14 also, by the way, who did that, which is super cool.
Is it the same kid who did the trailer thing?
From what I understand, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
Nice.
crazy.
So
That's awesome.
I think the ways that they... And, you know, bringing in Donald Glover or interpolating the Amazing Spider-Man footage or the I don't know which Spider-Man it is, but obviously I know the meme. He's the one with the biker jacket, and he's always brooding. You know?
Ben Reilly.
Yeah, Ben Reilly.
Yeah.
I think these
Voiced
things...
by Andy Samberg.
Andy Samberg.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think all of these things play really well to different people on different levels, depending on who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any moments of that stick out to you as someone who's not particularly like experienced with this?
Yeah.
Oh.
I figured that let's just cut it just for a second. Is Petra chewing on something?
Why?
She's in her cage.
Oh, are you crinkling something, Tucker?
Oops.
Very loudly. I figured...
I didn't realize it would pick it up.
Oh, no, it's fine. I figured the cat was, like, chewing on something in the corner or
No,
whatever.
she's kennel downstairs.
Yeah, no, I totally didn't even realize that. Great fucking pull. Thank you for stopping me. Genuinely.
Yeah.
I was I didn't even realize I was doing it.
So just ask your question again.
Okay. I guess I'm throwing this back to you, Abram, in terms of, like, a specific.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any of those events or multiversal shenanigans that, like, really glommed onto you as something that, like, was really funny? Was it that Lego part, or do they kind of feel like a wash to you? It's like, oh, this is big gumbo of multiversal spider nonsense.
I think that's definitely what it is to me, but it goes to what you were saying earlier of, I think this film invites rewatchability or invites a lot of rewatches in a way that feels very natural, because every reference is sewn into this big sense of, as I was saying before, this sort of anything goes mentality of not only adopting different, like slightly different animation styles. No, we're going into live action, we're going into stop motion. I love Vulture.
Hobie has a very different animation style. Yeah. And the Vulture, yeah.
I love all of this stuff. So to me, I think the reason why I'm like, oh, that's funny, Danny Glover's there, or oh, it's whatever, is because of
Danny
that.
Glover.
Sorry, Donald Glover.
Yeah.
Different
The
people.
Ghostbuster.
His friends call him Danny.
Ghostbuster is not in this one.
Different
that's
people.
right. That's an actor, yeah.
So no, I think...
not Ghostbusters. Fuck,
No,
that's Ernie Hudson.
Alien.
Alien.
Danny Glover?
Danny
No.
Glover is fucking Lethal
Waffle
Weapon.
Street. Danny Glover's also in Waffle Street. Continue.
I just like...
We gotta cut this out.
I like the sum of the parts. I think the sum of the parts is how this film is most successful to me.
Sure. Tanner, were there any examples that jumped out to you? Let's see if we can get an actual answer out of someone here.
Okay. So
I don't write for
I don't
CBR
know-
anymore. I'm not making lists. I'm not telling you references. I'm not explaining
Oh
anything.
no!
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I feel like I have to say, I think the moments where we see specifically Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, the events from their movies
Yeah.
are a little like, we're hanging on it. You recognize this thing,
The
don't you?
Andrew Garfield one
Yeah?
especially, yes.
Yeah, you get it. You know what you're doing. And we're just like showing clips from the movie. I get it. It's important to give us. That's probably the most important multiversal stuff in terms of like making this register with the audience that yes, all of the Spider-Man stories, even the ones that you know and you've seen in theaters and we just saw a couple years ago in No Way Home, even those are connected. This is not just held to the realm of animation and also Venom. Okay. And I think it's important, but I think there's a middle ground of like making the audience understand that and not being like, here just watch this for like 10-15 seconds, way longer than we hang on any other multiversal Spider-Man variant or whatever.
Am I correct, by the way, in think that Lego sequence was recreating Raimi's Spider-Man, right? That's what was going on.
No, it was
there?
just the Lego universe.
Okay.
I mean, it looked very akin to like that where he's like in J.
But
Jonah
it's
Jameson's
made out
office.
of Lego,
Of
so
course.
that's the. But like, I think that the idea that what comic Spider-Man, like 616 Spider-Man, and what Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and like each of these worlds has become iconic in their own ways, and so
Yeah.
elements of them we feel like, oh, are they pulling from this? Are they pulling from that? Are they what kind of pieces from which worlds are they stitching together? And I think that making there be a Lego world, which is an animation style, and I think I want to talk about the other worlds that we focus on in this.
Yep.
The differences in animation styles and locations and story point ideas, even if it is Peter Parker working at the Daily Bugle and taking a picture of J. Jonah Jameson, these are elements of those largely the canon stories, of course. And not every Peter works out at Daily Bugle, but these are such like consistent things that they can do something like make it a Lego world, and that is the difference. Is because it's made of Legos and not actually Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire's world is the Tobey Maguire world.
Yes.
Lego Peter Parker world is Lego Peter Parker world.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of great ones. I opened my discussion on this. My opening thoughts were about the animation and how beautiful and like borderline experimental it kind of is, if I can use that terminology. And the one I think of when I say that, thank you, Abram, for reminding me. The one I think of when I say that is Gwen Stacy's world. I mean,
Earth 65.
when we open on it and it's like watercolor, and then she's getting in an argument with her dad, and like the background of their apartment is overtaken by these like running paint on the background.
Oh my, it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's amazingly beautiful.
And it just feels completely different because, you know, we're sort of unanchored from reality in that world, even though it's much more expressive, and instead of maybe trying to display the reality of that Earth. But it's great. I mean, we have Mumbattan in this world as well with Spider-Man India. That's a great sequence. You mentioned Spider-Punk as well.
Yeah.
I love that he has always like these rough, like blocky outlines around him constantly as well, around his guitar all the time. I noticed that when he leans on his guitar, he's leaning on the outline of it, not the actual guitar. So like that's a physical thing within the space. And then you have Nueva York, which is cool. It's I love all the worlds. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, there's this really interesting sense. And it also goes into the sort of, as you're saying, Tucker, the ways that all of these references diverge, but also sort of come back together around these familiar storylines. There's a sense of all the animation. I mean, it's in a positive way. It's like a big smudge. Like everything's bleeding into each other. Everything is tumbled on top of one another. And as I said before, it is all showy.
Yes.
I don't actually think that this film has a single sort of like when Miles jumps into the Spider-Verse. I don't necessarily know if there's a moment analogous to that for me here, but that's not a negative. It's to me a sign that they have just taken their craft to an entirely new level and sort of assigned themselves a different set of goals, wherein I think the spectacle isn't so like traditional. I think the spectacle is a lot more subtle. I think you realize the real mastery of the craftsmanship here when you see, as you're saying, Tanner, the ways that the environments change behind Gwen and her father, and the ways that like the color palettes reflect their moods, and when they're distanced from each other, everything is blue, and then the ways that red start to be reintroduced into the vignette when they are reconnecting the end of the film, and then
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
And their love is being foregrounded again. It's very, when you think about it, it's very obvious. Blue is equated to this emotion, red is equated to this emotion, but the ways in which they're utilized are so subtle but so confident and so multifarious that I think every frame of painting just got a whole new movie to fucking chop.
Jesus Christ,
that's true.
No, absolutely. I think that what this movie really surprised me with, and I think the element where I still prefer Into the Spider-Verse, again, I have not seen Across the Spider-Verse nearly as much or had much time to like sit with it, but the reason I think that in this department, Across the Spider-Verse is clearly superior to Into the Spider-Verse is that it does feel a lot more experimental, and especially when we're in Earth 65, and not only are we using watercolor, which is a really cool, unique animation style that no real big studio film has ever like tried to accomplish, but in that it's doing different things with framing and lighting and using color instead of lighting, which is something I've never really seen before. And we've seen a lot of animated movies in our lives, and you're right that blue is sad and yellow/orange is happy/love is a pretty simple thing, but I can't think of another animated movie that's ever like used color theory in this way. And so when we think about but when we think about what Into the Spider-Verse did for animation and allowing there to be this sort of extra textual elements of a sound effect being like written out as he's like zipping across the screen and going, or the like the panel effects that they do in Into the Spider-Verse, those are less obvious here. There are a few of them, but they're not as present. I think that and we can see the comic book style and the sort of cel-shaded style of Into the Spider-Verse bleeding over into things like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem that are taking and sort of playing with the style and making it more prevalent. But instead of playing back in to what they did before, they said no. They're like, nah, I'll do my own thing. And then they just did like 10 different animation styles that I've never seen attempted before. And it really both pulls on the multiverse and the artistry of these creators, but also like showing that animation still has room to grow. We have not seen the end of what animation styling can do, and it's this specific team that have been given Spider-Man to work with that are just trying the next thing, and it's remarkably beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I dig about this film, is that in so many avenues, they don't try to stay in the same lane and one up themselves. They just try something else. They just do something else.
Do another lane.
They just do it. They just go to another lane. Like with the "What's Up, Danger" moment, the leap of faith that moment that Abram mentioned. That there's not a direct corollary to that moment in Across the Spider-Verse. And it's fine. Like I would rather them just like try to move on down the road than try to like, well, how are we gonna top it? How are we gonna top that moment specifically? This is sort of a diversion from what we've been talking about. Like, but the soundtrack, the score, they don't try to make another Sunflower, another like song that sort of underscores the entirety of Miles' character and his growth and his moments to himself throughout the film. They don't try to give us another one of those. They just give us an amazing score that I listened to basically all day yesterday on repeat that I love. They don't try to like one up themselves in that regard. They more broadly try to like, how do we elevate the product as a whole? How do we elevate the work as a whole? And that's why it works so beautifully.
I think another thing that elevates the entirety of the film is how the camera moves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's to me, that's kind of where the sort of nobody else is doing it like this factor comes in. The way the camera like will dive with our characters and be so fluidly moving through an action sequence. It's so complicated. Like I think about like that part in Mumbai, Manhattan. What's it called? Moombahton. That is such a complicated and dense sequence, and the way we are just sort of gliding with our characters is so impressive to the point where my mom turned to me after the movie. She's like, because my dad gets really motion sick. She's like, your dad would have thrown up watching this movie, and I think that's a testament to what they've created here.
That's a testament to quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
The bar of quality is, will Christian Buhner throw up?
Yes.
But I think I absolutely agree. They really did step up their game on not only the animation front, but just the the framing and the camera work and all of the digital cinematography that they're doing, I think, is very remarkable, and especially how it plays into the stories of the characters that we're learning about. I remember multiple frames of Rio and Jefferson and Miles being framed in interesting ways that sort of play with perspective and play into what is being said or the themes of the mood of that moment. It really is very cohesive, and it's something that you don't I can't really remember seeing much in other animated movies, because usually in terms of framing, they're mostly just like, hey, it's cool that we made an animated version of this. But they, with the sort of experimental edge that Across the Spider-Verse had, that I think Into the Spider-Verse sort of touched on, but they really have leaned into full force here. They've got a lot of really unconventional framing of things, of like half of a character's face and then a bunch of characters in the background or something. And I really love that they stepped up that game as well in a way that I've never seen an animated movie try. And again, it really steps up, as I want to get to, the character moments in this film.
I agree. Tucker, I want to talk about, because we talked about the multiverse stuff and
that nonsense.
Yeah,
just about the animation, that
just
nonsense.
To put a bow on that, like, I think it's very well done, and I enjoy that second half of the film, but at the same time, I just think it's a lot. And that and for that, it like loses me a little bit, especially when we're doing a hard shift out of the first hour of the film, which is where I really felt like, yeah, this is a perfect movie again. Like, when we are just with Miles and his parents in his world, balancing Spider-Man and life and stuff like that, and missing Gwen, pining for her, but then she comes back and we share a beautiful scene there. That's where I'm like, yeah, this is perfect, on par with Into the Spider-Verse, no holds barred, because I love that first hour. I mean, you get it's like classic Spider-Man stuff. You get him trying to balance being Spider-Man. He's been a Spider-Man for over a year now, and also he's trying to like figure out what he wants to do for college and trying to make his own path as his own person. And you get the fantastic fight with the Spot. You get the introduction of that character. He's so fun.
We need to talk about him.
Yeah. And Gwen again. Oh my god, I love that first hour. I mean, they could keep making Miles Morales Spider-Man movies, and I'd love it. And we don't have to do the multiverse stuff. Just make it just him being Spider-Man.
I wish that there wasn't some sort of like tacit understanding that every Spider-Man story has to be bigger than that. I think that's part of my issue with the Tom Holland stuff of like, can we just not have Doctor Strange show up? I don't give a fuck. Yeah. And
we'll get ready for Spider-Man 4, where no one knows who he is and he has to fucking figure it out. He lives in a shitty apartment.
Exactly, that's what I'm excited.
Don't like that for another set of reasons, but that's a different conversation to be had. I agree with you, Tanner, in large part. I'm actually not and this goes to my pacing complaint. Sure. I don't really like how the film opens. I feel like the Gwen stuff is going way too fast. I feel like I couldn't quite keep up with that.
They do introduce the whole element of what happened to her, Peter, at a fucking breakneck pace. And I'm like, I have read the Ghost Spider comics. I know that this happened. But I was imagining being anyone else and be like, okay, Peter is her friend, and then the cop dad and the Green Goblin thing, and then she killed her, and it makes more sense in retrospect. I think when you're learning about the dynamic between Gwen and her dad and how that has been complicated by the events, because I do think they linger on that enough to where it feels very personal. But it's like, it is literally one of those slap down the comic book. We're gonna run through this quickly, so you sort of got the general bullet points, but because Gwen's story at that point in time is like the first 20 minutes of the movie, I do wish that it had been paced a little bit slower to where it was maybe a flashback. Like, it was really like a genuine scene of her connecting to her Peter, and we saw that entire sequence of him turning into Green Goblin and ending up being killed in full, rather than cutting it a bunch, which I understand why they did, but it felt like it was going by so fast. I'm like, if I hadn't read these comics, I would have no fucking clue what's happening.
Also, he's the Lizard, not Green Goblin.
Oh, whatever. It's close enough. Close enough.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel. But then you also throw in, we got to introduce these other Spider-Men from other dimensions and then we got to escape into the multi. I felt like we were missing what the film then sort of gear switches into, which is slower, more character, less plot.
Definitely.
And again, I think that's one of my praise of the film in part is that they're able to keep character tracking with plot quite well. But I do think there are moments like that opening where I'm like, okay, you already lost me. And the mix isn't right, and I don't understand what's happening, and
couldn't understand Gwen at all. I leaned over to Sam and I was like, Haley, speak up.
I listen. I heard her well and clear. Okay, you guys got to clean your ears out.
I just think that the film is not at its best until we've dropped the title card and we're with Miles and we're actually figuring out what Miles is up to. I will say, though, I do almost feel like we circle the drain of similar thematic material to the first one again. With the, I just think that you're right, Tanner, that it's classic Spider-Man stuff, but I have seen Spider-Man juggle if he's being Spider-Man and not being Spider-Man so many times.
But it's so charming this time around. Like that's the important thing, is that, yes, that's the core of every Spider-Man story.
Right.
And I think it largely works in most Spider-Man stories because it's just like so applicable and so relatable in a lot of fashions when it's done right. And it's so charming this time around. I mean, I love Shameik Moore. I love Haley Steinfeld. I love Brian Tyree Henry.
Who I didn't know was Jefferson Davis, but he is.
Yeah,
I didn't know that
because in 2018 we didn't know who Brian Tyree Henry was.
That's a great point.
I don't know the actress's name for Miles' mom. But like, it's all so charming. I want to talk about Spot. I want to talk about the Spot and that whole chase and stuff. I'm doing the Obama thumb point.
Obama.
Soda.
It's great. I love it. That's where we open this film, is the Spot like trying to rob an ATM machine, or an ATM, just ATM. And we get that interesting chase. We get like 2 rounds of it. I really, really prefer the second one where his dad is along for the ride as well. Yeah. And they're like quipping back and forth. They're all out of their element. None of them really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's like, they're going through little holes. They're taking cop cars and water with them from water towers. And Jefferson Davis is making all these little quips and jokes. And it's like, hey, what's going on? I don't understand what's happening. And then we cap that off with a conversation between Jefferson and Miles as Spider-Man, and they don't know, he doesn't know that he's Spider-Man, and he's like trying to convince him to ease up on him. I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I think that the reason why I disagree with you a little bit, Abram, on this being like kind of feeling like it's retreading ground, is that I feel like they established what Miles' story was on the in terms of his familial dynamics so well, but also pretty simply in that first movie, that I was really excited to see it progress here. And because with this Spider-Man story, with this version of Miles' story, we've never seen on the big screen him have a full family dynamic like we see here, and getting conversations between Jefferson and Rio about what it's like to be a parent and moving on, and not understanding when they need to like ground him or not ground him, pull back. That is a theme that is like tacitly present in other superhero stories, but has never been explored as foregroundedly as it is here. And I was just engrossed with every single one of those moments, not only because the actors are turning in incredible work for these characters and the animators are really delivering that expressiveness, but because it played into Miles's insecurities and a relatable insecurity. Not that he's worried about his girlfriend from another dimension, but that he's longing for a crush that he hasn't seen in a while. Yeah. And that his parents don't quite understand what's going on with his life. And again, this is all tacitly present in other Spider-Man movies, but frankly, I think this is the best that it's ever been done, because it's so heavily focused on in that like 30-minute segment of the film. And I think it makes all the moments at the end, which again, I still feel like are cut short, but the moments at the end when Rio and Jefferson are talking and they don't understand why is Gwen here, and we're missing Miles, but we're kind of angry and upset. Like, there's so much there that cannot be as impactful as it is unless you spend a great chunk of time establishing this, reintroducing us to this dynamic, but pushing it forward and complicating it in really like interestingly thematic and interpersonal ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's even the component of like the whole Miles even feels like all this stuff's repetitive, right? And that's kind of, it's the film almost talks to itself in that way of like, Miles is going to go off and do his own thing now, and I think it's just sort of this tension of like, is it time to tell him I'm Spider-Man or not? I'm like, brother, just do it. Every Spider-Man has to do it at some point. Let's just do it and move on. But I think that the film in and of itself does sort of common conversation with these more like tropish elements of the Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that the parts of the movie that I do love the most is when everybody is sort of together. We got the parents, and we got Gwen, who's like maybe sort of the girlfriend or maybe not. What's the status there? I think the ways that all of their relationships are, or the desired relationships are clear to the audience, but not to each of the characters. There's this, I think, really fun sense of tension of the sort of will they, won't they? Just tell them, just get together, just do this, just do that. And I do think that is compelling, and I think you're right that these ideas of like parenthood are here, because every piece of modern media has to be about like parenthood in some way or another.
You gotta make it 4 quadrants, Abram. 4 quadrants.
And Peter Parker even has a kid now, which I thought was very cute.
Obviously, I love that. Yeah, I think parenthood is actually a present theme in the film. We don't need to get into too much, but it's present in Rio and Jefferson, and also Peter B. Parker.
And Miguel and Jess.
Yes,
both having interesting thoughts about what it means to be a parent and losing a child. And Miguel's story, I think, is actually the part of this movie I'm least clear on. They zoomed by his backstory so quickly. And
I think we're getting more of him in Beyond the Spider-Verse. I think by that I mean I think we're getting more background from him,
maybe.
Because there's a lot of like we hint at something. And I think he's probably going to be, he's hunting down Miles, obviously. I think he's going to be probably the overarching villain, maybe. Or maybe he's going to be the villain that we take down first, and then we got to go fight the Spot.
Miguel's got to turn tail. Right? He's got to turn to Miles' side by the end of that movie. The multiverse is going to be collapsing under the power of the Spot, which, by the way, I didn't get a chance to talk about the Spot, but I think that taking a notoriously goofy character and making him someone that has a real story in terms of being involved with Miles's past, but also being someone
He's
that
the
had
bagel guy.
That's so fucking funny.
Love it.
That's such a good turn. But giving him powers that I've never seen communicated on the screen before, and confusing our characters with that, I think gives him a really unique ability as a villain, to where we don't see Miles conquer the Spot at the end of this movie.
No.
He's still a fucking enigma, and every time he shows up, it's like, we can't hit him. What do we do? And especially when the Spot becomes more complicated in that he is like stepping outside his own bounds of what his own power can do, and then the animation style changes, and their minds are intertangled, and it's like this hand-drawn, like wibbly wobbly black and white art style. I'm like, whoa, they're really creating something here. And with the Spot's wacky ass performance and unique style and personality in relationship to Miles, I think by the end of Beyond the Spider-Verse, we will equate the Spot and Miles Morales like we do Peter Parker and Green Goblin. And I'm very excited for that.
People have been saying that they should make the Spot into like Miles's villain, essentially. And sure, I'm all for that, because I think he's great. I think he's very neurotic. I think it's a great element of Jason Schwartzman's performance as the Spot, is that he doesn't know what his powers do, really. Like, this is the first time he's really using them. But it's just like classic, you created me and now I'm going to hold you responsible for ruining my life. It's that sort of classic villain relationship to our hero.
I also like that he wants to be his arch nemesis.
Yes, he wants to be his arch nemesis.
And Miles is like, not really, you're just a guy. And he's like, I'm not a villain. I'm fucking not. We've never seen that before. It's really dumb, but it's funny.
He's kind of Syndrome core, which I like.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's really fun. I think the Spot is a great villain, partially because he's so impossible to understand. Like we know his backstory, and I like the backstory. I think that's cool, but it's like, I don't understand what his powers do.
Yeah.
But I don't think I really need to. I don't understand I don't understand. Like, he built this big doohickey and he like stuck his finger in it and something happened.
He kicked himself into himself.
I love that.
I just kicked myself into myself.
I think a character that's this irreverent and this visual is perfect for a film like this. Because ultimately, Tucker, I agree with you completely. This sort of sketchy, literally like sketched line, black and white, is beautiful. I love that, and I do love the idea of just like, he makes portals and like sometimes stuff falls through them, and sometimes it's like the game portal, jumping around, or like it's so
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't come out until
Yeah.
later, and like, why does that happen?
Mhm.
Who the fuck knows? Doesn't matter. And I also just like that because he's not controlling it, it creates environmental chaos in a very unique way. And like watching things happen in the background, like there's a coffee shop and there's like water gets dumped on all these people. Like, what the fuck is happening here? And that the ATM pops out of the sidewalk and someone's like, hey, who left an ATM in the middle of the street? And like, there's so much physical comedy here
Yeah.
that is excellently done.
Yeah.
Because of like, what the fuck does this guy do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I-
And of course, oh, sorry, Abram, go ahead.
I just think that this film does a really nice job of leaning into the sort of joyous, anything can go spectacle of comics.
Yeah.
I think that's what I enjoy so much. The density of every image, there's always something going on. Speaking to your point of its physical comedy, of the, hey, when Miles' dad's like, I need the crane over here, because the cop car's like kind of hanging out in midair, then it just falls, and it's this chain reaction of shit. It's very, very cleverly executed. I love the spot. Miguel, I want to talk about, because
Okay.
I honestly don't understand at all what happened to Miguel. I don't.
Okay.
I barely do either.
When he took
Okay, so
well, I want to clarify my question, because
Okay.
I don't understand, but I have a couple of specific questions.
sure,
It's his daughter.
right.
He finds out that there's a version of him that has kids. So he
Yes.
gets his daughter, but then something made the world fall apart, and something happens when the canon events break, and so it's his job to do something to stop something else from happening. What is
so-
Miguel's function, and what happened to his daughter?
well,
I don't think he ever initially had a daughter, or maybe he did, and it's not stated to us in Across the Spider-Verse, and that's a reveal coming in Beyond the Spider-Verse. There's also the element of him that he's like a vampire, which I think needs to be explored more for sure.
well, from
But-
what I gathered on
Yeah.
his power side is that when it like he's probably a scientist who created something that could see into other worlds. I don't
Yeah.
know why that's not like more explained here, but I can surmise that from like
Yeah.
what his role is. But then he found out that there was another world where he had a family, and
Where he's
there also
happy,
was
yeah.
Spider-Man, and he's not Spider-Man. So I think he created an artificial serum that
Oh.
that's why he keeps having to like inject himself. It
Sure.
gives him his vampire Spider-Man powers, and it's also why he doesn't have webs. He uses these like red
Oh yeah,
light
he shoots it.
beams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so the fact that he is not this world's Spider-Man, but there was a Miguel O'Hara who was this world's Spider-Man, is what's causing the world that he was in to
Yes.
to break down. And now because he knows that can happen, he wants to stop other misplaced canon events or anomalies, I think they call them,
He feels-
from happening because he
yeah.
doesn't want to destroy other people's universes.
He feels held responsible because he sort of did it first. He
Yeah.
went into a universe that he wasn't supposed to be in, and that has consequences where it destroys that
Maybe.
entire world. Yeah.
We'll see.
I
I,
did-
think there's another reason for it, but
I did get that PowerPoint, the point about the power that you're making, Tucker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that was pretty clearly inferred. When I love him injecting himself, and you kind of see like these new blood platelets or whatever attacking the other ones. I think he's a really cool character. I'm a huge Oscar Isaac fan, so I like his performance a
Of course.
lot.
Yeah.
I'm just unclear about sort of what the ramifications of this stuff is.
yeah.
I
And that's
think-
absolutely what Beyond the Spider-Verse will be dealing with, because I think that us introducing us to the Spider Corps or whatever they're called, this team,
Spider
all these
Society.
characters,
Spider Society.
thank you, is what the function of this movie is, and then exploring that now that we have that context is what Beyond the Spider-Verse is. And I agree with you that it feels like unfulfilled, but I'm even kind of like rewriting my own point at the beginning of like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
this is ostensibly
Yeah.
a 5-hour movie. So we just aren't getting that last act. I'm very confused about it. I'm not quite sure where I land, but I think it makes sense.
See, I don't, and I think the reason I would say that is because I think about like Infinity War, right? Infinity War is really successful because while it is only half of a story, everything in there is very, very clear, and there's a very
Sure,
there's a
absolutely.
very defined goal everywhere in there. And to your point, Tanner, I'm not super satisfied with the cliffhanger because I think that we complete Miles and Gwen's this phase of their character arc very well. I think that's super effective.
Mhm.
But like not understanding, like just flat out not understanding what's happening with these canon events, not understanding what Miguel's situation is, I can't at least so easily justify it by saying, oh, okay, well the thing I'm going to spend another $15 on in 9 months is going to retroactively make that clear. I
Yeah.
think there's a way to sort of isolate what's important in each half of your movie, and then still have
definitely.
that bridge. For as much as I'm already iffy on the 1 part, 2 part movie thing, I think you can do it in a way that makes everything feel a little bit more contained.
Yeah. And I'm not pushing back against the idea that there's a lot of information thrown at you very fast,
I think
and
that's
that's why I still think that I prefer Into the Spider-Verse is that it's just on its own merits more simple than Across the Spider-Verse is. More simple and therefore more effective, I think, because it's not trying to be a setup for another probably pushing 2.5 hour movie that's coming in 11 months or whatever. But one last thing I wanted to say, and it's really an opportunity to shit on the other big animated movie that's come out this year, is just we get to spend time and talk. We get to chill for a little bit, especially in the first hour of the movie. And I understand that the second half moves a little fast, but when we are just talking to Miles's parents under the water tower, when we're talking to Gwen, I'm like, I love it. I fucking love this shit.
It's a fucking movie.
It's a real movie. Our characters are talking to each other. It's like a go to the theater kind of movie. They sit down upside down or what have you, and they just talk about what they mean to each other. They talk about their needs. You feel the reservations that they have with actually telling the truth to one another. It's like they're real people in a real movie.
Yeah, upside down.
Upside down.
Spider powers.
And spider powers.
Really?
And then I think back to the Super Mario Brothers movie. I'm like, God, that movie was ass. God, that fucking movie is written so shittily. Holy fuck. Never. I don't need to get into it. But just comparing and contrasting the two biggest animated movies of the year, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Hydrogen Bomb versus
Wish.
Coffee Baby versus Hydrogen Bomb. Yeah, is what I'll say.
You don't want to start this conversation because to me, Tanner, the Coughing Baby is this one. But I'm also a shill for Nintendo.
Of course, I know.
But you're 100% right in that, for me, too, some of my favorite moments are much quieter because I think they're where we illustrate the total mastery of this creative team. Because that moment with Gwen is not only really inventive of like, oh, of course the spider people sit upside down to think, and it's just normal for them. But the way the camera follows them as they're walking inside of the building, and then it follows them down below, and the New York skyline is upside down. And then we're doing these nice little insert shots of his hand moving closer and his hand moving farther is what she says, and then she leans on him. It's all just very confidently and effectively communicated, and it extends also to when Gwen reunites with her father at the end of the film, which I think might be, in my opinion, the strongest sequence that they have. On a writing level, I think on a visual level, it's subtle, but it's so beautiful. You're right, Tanner. And I think that it's especially nice that this happened here because it would have been very easily to only be the Spider Society go stuff. It would have been very simple to do that and just ride entirely on spectacle. But they didn't. They took the time to have characters mean something to each other.
If this was the Super Mario Brothers movie, we would have picked up exactly where Into the Spider-Verse left off, and we're just like into the portal, and we're off. We're off into the multiverse for 2.5 hours.
What I think is interesting, actually, is that I assumed that's where this movie started, and I think it's a very good creative decision to give us like 3 days in Miles's life before that ends up happening, and so you're reestablished to the stakes of what he's being ripped out of when Gwen gets her portal watch and shows up over his bed that we saw at the end of that first movie.
Yeah.
And also giving us a backstory of before Gwen got that. For some reason, I guess when I saw the end of Into the Spider-Verse, I was like, oh, she just like got the watch and like whatever, and then we'll just Miles will just go to her dimension. It'll be fun and whatever. But the idea of she has this sort of test that she has to go through for Jess and Miguel to sort of accept her into the Spider Society, and she's been a part of it for a couple months before she actually went and visited Miles. And then I really love the tension within Gwen of working for this group of people that she wants to respect her and wants to follow those rules, but then having this like yearning to return to the thing that the only friend that she's made since Peter died of Miles. And then the way that it's complicated in the sequence where she's visiting Earth 1610, where Miles is from, of her like constantly checking her watch of like, oh, and then you don't quite understand what's happening. Like, is she here because something else is happening? Is she like stalking him? Are people watching him? It's very convoluted, but I think by the end of that sequence, there's such interesting tensions there. And I think that the characters that they establish here, I think are maybe not funnier than the group of side characters we get into the Spider-Verse, but I think they're much more interesting characters. And I think they're given a lot more time to like establish who they are and what makes them distinct rather than the cartoonishly over the top. It's just Spider-Ham and Spider-Man Noir. Yeah, but with Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, Jess Drew, Spider-Woman, and Spider-Man India is kind of like a middle ground to where like we know his story, but he's also kind of like so goofy that it's like barely an established character. But I think that group of characters, and also Spider Bite, the girl that has like an avatar in the other dimension, that's also kind of a Spider-Man. She's very cool. But I'm interested to learn more about her story because she's kind of like underserved here. I think that group of characters introduced that are joining the group of characters we met in Into the Spider-Verse is a really nice balance. And the dynamic between Gwen and Hobie and Jess and Miles, I think, is really, really fantastic. I'm excited to see them all continue into the future.
Yeah.
I really like Hobie. Yep. I think he's super cool. I'm really excited about Cyberpunk, Spider-Punk. Not only because...
Can't understand anything he says, but...
well, that's just he's got that thick Daniel Kaluuya accent going on.
That's Daniel Kaluuya doing the voice?
It is Daniel Kaluuya.
Sick.
Unfortunately, that's what he sounds like.
I think he's play. I think I say that's his accent. He's definitely playing it up.
He just has
quite
a British accent. I didn't find him hard to understand at all, but I guess it's also what I do. I talk to British people all the time. But
that's true.
I think to me he speaks to where this film is so effective of introducing this brand new visual style, introducing this character who you can define so quickly. We'll
definitely see his universe next time, which is really exciting.
But he's defined through visuals, but he's also sort of hinging upon this set of characteristics that I really like. I mean, I think his punk rock anti-establishment thing is pretty cool.
It's a good bit underlying everything that he's like, he's anti-everything, and he's like, taking a crap on the establishment. Yeah.
Oh my god, when the baby is doing shit it's not supposed to, and he's like,
yeah,
that's punk rock, baby. Yeah. It's so fucking funny.
He's like a step beyond Spider-Man Noir of like he is kind of a bit character, but there's clearly more going on here with the relationships that are pre-established. And
I also like that. Okay, because he's set up when Gwen brings him up. She's like Miles is like jealous. Obviously, he's like, "Who's this guy?" But that's not like a. We don't get bogged down in this movie with like the relationship love triangle thing. We're just like, oh yeah, Hobie's great. He's fucking awesome, dude. He's like helping Miles out. He's like, yeah, remember to do the thing. And when Miles is locked up, he's like, do the thing with the palms. Like, I dig that we're not supposed to, we're not just like bogged down in like, is he gonna steal Gwen? Oh no.
Yeah.
There is a love triangle there though, right?
It's very, like, it's initially set up, but I'm glad that we don't get, like... It's very clear that Miles and Gwen doesn't view Hobie as, like, a romantic interest. And that's also what, apparently Amy Pascal, like, a couple months ago said, oh yeah, there's, like, a jealousy thing with these characters. I'm like, there's not really.
Are you sure,
And I'm glad that there isn't.
Because they talk about how she's left her toothbrush and everything, like, over at his place, and that her stuff is... Like...
I don't know. I think we're not supposed... I think... We are not supposed to be like, is Miles actually gonna get Gwen? Are they gonna get together? Da-da-da-da.
How old is
Gwen? I don't think we're supposed to think that.
Older than Miles, and Miles is 15.
Yeah, Miles
which I
is
think
15.
is interesting. Yeah.
And
then Hobie's probably like 27 or something like that.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
I mean, Gwen apparently. I think it's funny that Miles' dad is like, Gwen looks old enough to vote.
That was a funny line.
And it's like, well, yeah, that's true. If I had a TikTok account, I'd probably make a video about how this is problematic or whatever. But I'm just excited to see the relationship unfold because I do like the idea of like Miles, much like the actor he plays, going after somebody who's maybe out of his league in many different ways.
I don't think that's the thing though, because Gwen is still very clearly interested romantically in Miles and vice versa. Like, and I don't think we're supposed to feel any tension really there. I think it's just like a moment of stress. She's supposed to still
be in. I think she might be like 17 or 18 because she's supposed to still be in high school when she's performing with her band, the Mary Janes, at the beginning. They're performing in a high school auditorium.
Yeah,
and I didn't like that part.
everything that we know about her is that maybe she just like is older because of what she's gone through. And Miles doesn't quite have, or like she appears older.
Yeah.
She presents older than she actually is because she's seen a lot of shit and had to deal with the stresses that have been a part of her life. But it is a question mark. I don't believe we know her canon age.
I don't want to get bogged down in all this. It doesn't matter.
So either Hobie's a pedophile or Gwen is a pedophile.
Hey, maybe Hobie's like 18. Maybe it's fine. We don't know.
I was just suggesting maybe Hobie's like a libertarian or something.
Well, he's an anarchist, so he's like, I don't believe in any rules, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had something. The last thing I want to say. Oh, speaking of Gwen and like the band, actually, the thing of like I put together my own band, and we get Spider-Ham, we get Spider-Man Noir, we get Penny Parker. We're all doing it, baby. They're all back together. We're teaming them up with the new characters from across the Spider-Verse. I'm excited for that, mainly because when I saw Spider-Man Noir, Nicolas Cage, I'm like, fuck yeah, baby, he's back. He's back for this one.
What excites me most is that now we've had both of these groups established and that we're still like, we've actually made significant progress in Peter B. Parker, Gwen Stacy, and Miles Morales' stories. There is the space, and I think they will give smaller arcs to all these supported characters as well. You can see the seeds that are being sown to not only establish what they end up becoming at the end of an arc, but also the fact that we've never seen in detail any of their universes, and it will be the greatest to visit Peter Parker's fucking universe to see what Spider-Man Noir goes through, and frankly, like, this is the most obvious one to me. We were talking about Hobie earlier. I think we'll obviously see his universe, but even Jess Drew, like, we don't know that much about her other than that she has this dynamic with her husband and stuff, and there's no way she doesn't have that baby by the end of the third movie.
That's
and
true.
That we haven't seen her husband and how that like impacts their dynamic, and I'm really excited to see what they do here, and also maybe what they can do outside of this for these characters going into the future. I know we're not the most like, oh yeah, every side character's got to have their own fucking series and shit, but maybe they are, and I think that they've established so much stuff here that I would be interested in seeing these stories continue in different ways. And it's just such a nice like net. Like, I feel like we've established so many points. I'm like, all of these points I believe will be established and closed by the end of this next movie.
It fills you with confidence, this movie, honestly.
That big team up shot, I think, is a sort of really effective example of sort of the two-part movie for me, of like, hey, here's everybody from not even this film, but the first film, and they're here with all these new characters who set up, and now there's a team, and next movie we're going to see them all together. I think that works really well. And I do think, Tucker, I remember,
Age of Ultron.
Like Age of Ultron, which is a good movie. I remember back to like when Blade Runner 2049 was coming out, and they were releasing these sort of like short films in the Blade Runner universe leading up to 2049. I would love to see 8 to 10 minute shorts about some of these characters, as you're saying. Because I do actually think that this sense of expressive animation really does lend itself to a 1930s or 40s Disney style. Or like Looney Tunes or Tom Jerry style, not non-verbal, just really visual short form animation story. I would love to get some of these characters.
Couple things before we end, because we do have to wrap it up here. Apparently where was the short film that's about like a day in Miles Morales' life as Spider-Man? Were we supposed to get one of those? I don't know.
Remember that.
It was. I think I remember it because people were joking about it, that we see him have a panic attack.
I was gonna make a fucking joke about this, Tanner.
Sorry. Another thing. This is a stupid thing, but I want to bring it up. Where was Morbius? I want to see Morbius universe. There's a line where they're talking about Miguel, and she's like, and Gwen says, he's like a vampire. And Miles says, a good guy who's a vampire? That seems unlikely. And I turned to my friend Joe and I said, what about Morbius? Where's Morbius?
They're not going to do Morbius.
There's also a lot to do in this third film, if we're talking about what's coming next in Beyond the Spider-Verse. I mean, we have to defeat Miles Morales as the Prowler. We have to confront...
We have to defeat Hobie as the Prowler, too, apparently.
No. We have to change the mind of Miguel O'Hara and the rest of like the people hunting down Miles, and we have to defeat the Spot.
Yeah. Sure.
So I wouldn't be don't set your expectations too high for and we're gonna see everyone's individual Spider universe
okay.
and a little story
You're
within them. We'll also probably see live action Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Probably.
And probably the other live action Spider-Man. I would not.
Yeah, we don't. Do we see Tom Holland in this movie?
No.
He's referred to. But
yes.
we see Glover, so he's at
yeah,
That's
so
true.
the MCU is canon, and also it is canon because don't get me started about that little nerd on Earth 1999.
It's so stupid that there's so many nines, and just make it 1999.
Really
Is that 1999 999 is what he says, right?
So.
There's too many nines.
There's one other point I just want to make as we're coming out of this to speak about depictions of panic attacks. I think back to the beginning of Puss in Boots: Last Wish, where there's a really awesome action sequence that opens that film.
Yep.
But it's done in 2 minutes.
Yep.
I think one of the huge big dick swinging, we're just better at this than you moments of Across the Spider-Verse is that chase sequence, because chase sequence goes on for so long. I think that's part of what's so incredibly impressive about this film is just the duration of these action sequences and the complexity in that frame. To me, there's just a sense of just creative direction and vision and masterwork and awe in every one of these action sequences that I just think deserves a very explicit shout out, because to me that's half of the strength of the film for me. It's just how amazing all this looks in motion.
Yeah, spectacular, if you will.
We do see him too.
Awesome-tacular?
Awesome-tacular Spider-Man. which Spider-Man is the awesome-tacular Spider-Man? Is it Jeremy Johns in his Blade cosplay with a Spider-Man mask?
We do see Abram. You'll be the only one who gets this, but we see Metro Boomin Spider-Man.
What is that?
Metro Boomin is the musical artist who oversaw the creation of the score and soundtrack.
Oh.
And he's the guy. He has long braids. He's a Spider-Man who has long braids, and he says "Don't worry, guys. There's nowhere else for him to run." And then he dives out the window. He's like, "Oh, I guess there was one place for him to run."
Okay. I did not get that reference, but I do think that the amount of funky designs they have in the background is really quite fantastic, and it really pulls at the strings of us seeing Spider-Ham in that first movie, and it's do animals talk in this universe? Because I don't want to freak them out. The lengths that they've gone to create everything being Spider-Man is really
Peter Park car.
Oh my god,
that was so fucking funny.
That's something I've been thinking about.
There's a T-Rex one.
There's a T-Rex
fucking T-Rex one, and the web slinger that is on the horse, and the horse has to hide its. Why is the horse got a mask? Because it's got to hide its face. What the fuck is that?
My mom loves the cat that throws up the web.
Of course, yes.
And there was one. There are a couple that I recognized because I have read the Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon comic books that are just in the background. I'm like, I got the Pog moment.
Insomniac Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, they do.
You see them playing the game.
They
do see him.
No,
playing the game.
you don't.
Oh.
It's Spider-Man 2. In the credits at the very bottom, it's special Thanksgiving to Insomniac for the game Spider-Man 2. So Genki's playing an early copy of that game. What the fuck?
Oh my god.
But also you can't tell.
Yeah, that's true.
So it doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, it actually is Spider-Man 2.
Nice. Fun.
But yeah, the Insomniac Spider-Man's... I think that for me was the most grown-worthy thing of look, we got the video game character version.
The video game guy.
God. And he's looking
No,
probably Garen Lowenthal, of course, but god damn it.
He says something, doesn't he? He's like, what
me,
am I doing here?
Yeah. It's really fucking stupid.
All right. That's it.
Do we give a score?
Yeah, we give a score. We got to put this on our Spider-Man ranking. We have ranked every single Spider-Man movie
okay,
leading up to this.
Let me fucking pull this up a second. Holy shit.
What's this series called?
I don't know.
It
wasn't Into the Spider-Verse. No,
I don't think there is a... I don't know. Was there?
It's just UMP, right? Are UMP Spider-Man? No, there probably wasn't him. We're creative bastards.
Flippers Anonymous.
That sounds like you shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
So they gotta go flip.
MCU ranking.
There we go.
Spider-Man. All right.
Score
All right,
time.
so it's time to give our scores. We are pulling back up our old Spider-Man ranking in 2021 leading up to Spider-Man No Way Home. We've reviewed every one of the Spider-Man movies of varying quality. And now we've got another one.
Yes.
I think one of the better ones to add to this list. Frankly, my score and thought on this film has increased significantly since we started talking. I think that breaking down what this film does very well artistically and thematically, and so as Abram said multiple times, confidently, makes me think a lot higher of this movie. And I do think that as some of the elements that we talked about of it being like delivering a lot of information at you very fast and there being pacing issues, for me, those are both issues that can be quickly glommed over if I watch it multiple times. I've had multiple experiences with movies where I'm like, oh, what the fuck's going on with the pacing here? Oh, I don't understand this. But then I watch it again, I'm like, oh no, it makes sense. It feels good now. And not that is like, that it wasn't a problem initially, but I think that I will learn to appreciate this movie more as I think about it more and experience it multiple times. So,
okay, enough faffing about 3, 2, 1, enter.
There we go. 8.7.
That's a tie.
Oh no!
We actually got a tie on an 10 movie list here. The list as it stands currently has Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse at 9.8, Spider-Man Homecoming at 9.4, Spider-Man No Way Home, too low, at 9.0, and Spider-Man 2 at 8.7, which is the exact same score that balancing out our Across the Spider-Verse score is. The point breakdown goes me at an 8.8, Tanner at a 9.3, and Abram at an 8.1. So, boys, Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
I think Spider-Man 2 is a better movie.
I significantly raised my score from as you were saying, Tucker. You were saying your opinion on it raised. I'm like, mine did too. So I may have overinflated my score here. So I'm gonna go Spider-Man.
That's fine.
2.
That's fine. I mean, I disagree, and you're wrong. But that, of course, means that the balance of this.
I figured you would.
The balance of this goes that Spider-Man 2 is still the fourth highest rated Spider-Man movie by the preeminent Spider-Man critics here on the internet. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse sits at our number 5 place as a top 5 Spider-Man all-time movie. Actually, right in the middle of the list, there are 4 above and 4 below.
Yeah. The wokeists win, and this is a good movie.
There's actually a very significant gap between Across the Spider-Verse and the next one down, which is Far From Home, at a 6.8. That is almost 2 points lower.
There's plenty of room for just good Spider-Man
instead of
movies.
great ones. We've got the top in like what the fuck's going on here.
Too many great Spider-Man movies.
It's true. Well, we broke this movie down 6 ways from fucking Sunday, and we'll be back in 9 months to do the same thing again for the closing of this trilogy. Which, I could not be more excited for this fucking movie. God damn.
Yeah.
And especially when we see like what they do to up their game, because they really have proven that they can continue to one-up themselves, and I don't expect that's changing for a third movie.
Yeah. March 29th, 2024. No videos until then. See you there.
It's going to get delayed.
The letterbox page pulled up here so I can actually... Shut the fuck up, dude.
I'm gonna pretend to be a pterodactyl for this review.
Okay, give me your best pterodactyl impression.
We don't know what they sounded like. They died before there was microphones.